All right, let me get those in. Good morning, everybody. Just a second, I'll let you know what page it's on. Okay. All right, so let's go over the book 3 questions. Guys who are watching from home, please get this to me as soon as you can. All right, any questions about the book 3 questions? You can always go back and ask me another day. All right, so first off, remember. That we meet whom? Nestor. So Nestor's in book 3. So and then in book 4, Telemachus visits Menelaus, another one of his father's comrades in the war. So yeah, just make sure that you guys are keeping those two straight because these 2 visits are somewhat different from each other. All right, the poetry recitation is Thursday. So reminder, today, tomorrow, Wednesday are your last chances to recite for me outside of class time if you don't want to recite in front of the class.
When is it?
Thursday. Yeah, 3 days. So you can come today outside of class, tomorrow outside of class, Wednesday outside of class, and recite for me. You can get 1 attempt per day, and an additional attempt can't hurt your grade. So please make sure you're studying that. I'll read it again so that we're getting that repetition, getting it in our ear. Guys who are at home, please contact me about finding a time to recite for me, or you can do that during my office hours on Wednesday afternoon. But otherwise, we should find time no later than Thursday afternoon to do that. All right, so let me read it again, and then we'll continue with Homer. Sonnet 94 by William Shakespeare. They that have power to hurt and will do none, that do not do the thing they most do show, who moving others are themselves as stone, unmoved, cold, and to temptation slow. They rightly do inherit heaven's graces, and husband nature's riches from expense. They are the lords and owners of their faces, others but stewards of their excellence. The summer's flower is to the summer sweet, though to itself it only live and die. But if that flower with base infection meet, the basest weed outbraves his dignity. For sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds. Lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. Make sure you know how to pronounce these words. Try to make it clear. If you don't understand something, look it up or ask me. Understanding the poem will make it much easier to memorize, especially for the guys who are not native English speakers. I was talking about this a little bit with my Latin class last period. So one of the things I do in my Latin class is every quarter, at the end of the quarter, they have to recite for me the prayer that we say at the beginning of class. So we do a different prayer each quarter. We say it every day all together, and then at the end they have to recite it for me. And I pointed out to them that for me, it's much easier to memorize these things. Of course, I already know them. But memorizing them was much easier for me because I know so much more Latin than they do. And when it's a foreign language or just something even very difficult in your own language, it starts to become more like memorizing random sounds than memorizing words. And so if you learn these words and you learn what they mean, it's going to be much easier for you to memorize it. So that's my advice there, especially those of you who are not native English speakers. When you learn these poems, really make sure you know what the words mean. Make sure you're saying them correctly. Because there's things like rhyme and the rhythm will help you remember the poem also. If you say the wrong thing, it'll feel wrong. All right, so back to Homer. We're in book 4. Telemachus is in which city in Greece? Sparta. Who's there that he's visiting?
What is that? Homer?
Yep, Menelaus, who was one of the Greek leaders at the Trojan War. Telemachus is there. Menelaus is there. Remember, his wife is who? Helen, the woman that the whole war was fought over. We also have Pisistratus here. Who's Pisistratus? Pisistratus?
Oh, Nestor's son.
Right, one of Nestor's sons, whom he sent with Telemachus to show him the way to Sparta from Pylos. Yes. And all 4 of these characters, as they engage in this conversation at the feast for this double wedding, Menelaus' son and daughter both getting married. Telemachus shows up just in time for the party. And somebody tell me a little bit about their conversation, the kind of conversation that they have here. These four characters.
Oh.
So they eat this wonderful feast, and then they start talking. What do they talk about? What direction does the conversation take? The war. The war. Yes. And this is all sparked by Telemachus' comment about how beautiful Menelaus' house is. The reason why Menelaus is so rich is because of the war. But how does Menelaus feel about this?
He doesn't think it was worth it.
He doesn't think it was worth it. He lost friends. He lost his brother. And which Greek in particular is he upset about? Odysseus. Agamemnon also, of course. But Agamemnon at least has had the proper burial, the proper honor given to him. Odysseus, nobody knows. He's probably dead. But the Greeks, they have this concept of the gods. Their gods are in some ways different from humans, in some ways very like them. The biggest difference being that the gods are immortal or deathless. Sometimes you see it described as, which is what the word immortal means. But what Greek religion, especially at the time of Homer, lacks, as opposed to what we're more familiar with, is a positive view of life after death. And we'll see a little bit of this later in the book. But for the Greeks, there's a sort of existence after death, but it's really not enjoyable. And what we have here is what matters. And if you want immortality, the best kind of immortality that you're going to get is fame, is people remembering you throughout the ages. Glory, won in battle or some other way. And one of the most important things to make sure that you have this honor after death is your funeral. There's a Greek play, Antigone, which has this as a theme, the importance of burial for the Greeks. And so Odysseus has not had that. He's missing. All right, yes. Each of these characters has been affected directly or indirectly by the war. Pisistratus lost a brother. Telemachus, his father. Menelaus, his brother. Helen, yeah, and she feels guilt about it. Notice on page 129, line 162, she refers to herself as a shameless whore. In the Iliad, at one point, she refers to herself as a bitch, which is just as mean a thing to say in Greek as it is in English. Helen feels a lot of guilt here also. Sort of, at least sort of, right. It's always ambiguous about Helen. You know, to what extent did she want to go? To what extent was she kind of tricked or forced into it? She definitely feels a lot of guilt about this, about leaving her husband. Now, remember also that she, here in this scene, she's saying this in front of her husband, who lost so many friends and his brother because of the war. So maybe there's a little bit of that there, where she's trying to act sorry in front of him. But that's not the whole story. She's definitely racked with guilt about this. She witnessed the war firsthand. She watched the battles. She was there when the city was destroyed. Okay. So they finished their conversation on page 131. And Menelaus says, line 237, "Come, rinse our hands. Tomorrow at dawn we'll offer me and Telemachus time to talk and trade our thoughts in full." As Phalion quickly rinsed their hands with water, another
What page you want?
131, line 241 here. Another of King Menelaus ready aids and arms. Again, they reached for the good things set before them. Then Zeus's daughter Helen thought of something else. Into the mixing bowl from which they drank their wine, she slipped a drug. Heart's ease, dissolving anger, magic to make us all forget our pains. No one who drank it deeply, molten wine, could let a tear roll down his cheeks that day. Not even if his mother should die, his father die. Not even if right before his eyes some enemy brought down a brother or darling son with a sharp bronze blade. So cunning the drugs that Zeus's daughter plied. Potent gifts from Polydamna, the wife of Thon. A woman of Egypt, land where the teeming soil bears the richest yield of herbs in all the world. Many, health itself when mixed in the wine, and many deadly poison. Every man is a healer there, more skilled than any other men on earth, Egyptians born of the healing god himself. So now Helen, once she had drugged the wine and ordered wine cups filled, resuming the conversation, entertained the group. My royal King Menelaus, welcome guests here, sons of the great as well. Zeus can present us, 132, times of joy and times of grief in turn. All lies within his power. So come, let's sit back in the palace now, dine and warm our hearts with the old stories. I will tell something perfect for the occasion. Surely I can't describe or even list them all, the exploits crowding fearless Odysseus' record. But what a feat that hero dared and carried off in the land of Troy, where you Achaeans suffered. Scarring his own body with mortifying strokes, throwing filthy rags on his back like any slave, he slipped into the enemy's city, roamed its streets, all disguised, a totally different man, a beggar, hardly the figure he cut among Achaea's ships. That's how Odysseus infiltrated Troy. No one knew him at all. I alone, I spotted him for the man he was, kept questioning him. The crafty one kept dodging. But after I'd bathed him, rubbed him down with oil, given him clothes to wear, and sworn a binding oath not to reveal him as Odysseus to the Trojans, not till he was back in his swift ships and shelters, then at last he revealed to me step by step the whole Achaean strategy.
Wait, I'm confused.
Mm-hmm.
They found Odysseus?
She found him where? In Troy. She's remembering this from in the war. And once he'd cut a troop of Trojans down with his long bronze sword, back he went to his comrades, filled with information. The rest of the Trojan women shrilled their grief, not I. My heart leapt up. My heart had changed by now. I yearned to sail back home again. I grieved too late for the madness Aphrodite sent me, luring me there far from my dear land, forsaking my own child, my bridal bed, my husband too, a man who lacked neither brains nor beauty. So what is this? What does Helen do? The conversation is really not going very well. Yeah, the glass is chipped there. And so what does she do? How does she change the course of the conversation? What does she do on page, what is it, 131? She drugs them. She puts some kind of drug in the wine. And now, because of this drug, they're not able to feel sad anymore. But the topic of conversation is still Odysseus. Happier memories. What memory does Helen share about Odysseus?
A good one.
A good one? What happened here? Interesting, this counts for her as a good memory. Where was she?
She was in Troy.
In Troy, so during the war.
Odysseus came in
Mm-hmm.
and he told her to play for rescue.
Right, how did Odysseus get into Troy? He's Greek. There's a war going on. How did he get into Troy? Not the horse, not here.
What's the Achaean strategy?
The Achaeans are the Greeks, so he revealed the Greek strategy to Helen. But how did he get into the city?
Was it not the horse?
Not here. Not yet.
Was carried his own body with marked names. Okay. No.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're in lines 274, 275, or continue. Scarring his own body with mortifying strokes, throwing filthy rags on his back like any slave, he slipped into the enemy's city, roamed its streets, all disguised, a totally different man, a beggar,
Totally impossible.
hardly the figure he cut among Achaeans' ships.
I said impossible.
Is it hanging on?
He disguised himself as a beggar. He hits himself, he puts dirty clothes on. It's clever Odysseus. He's known for his cleverness. So he sneaks into the city, and none of the Trojans recognize him, except Helen. Helen recognizes him. What does she do? Does she blow him in?
No.
No. What does she do?
That's the
Yeah, she lets him continue his thing, but she also gets something out of him. What does he tell her? We just said it before. I alone, 281, I spotted him for the man he was, kept questioning him. The crafty one kept dodging. But after I'd bathed him, rubbed him down with oil, giving him clothes to wear and sworn a binding oath not to reveal him as Odysseus to the Trojans, not until he was back at his swift ships and shelters. Then at last he revealed to me step by step the whole Achaean strategy. What did she get out of it?
Wait, so
So you guys are tactics.
Yeah, she figured out what their plan was.
So who's talking right
This is Helen telling this story about the war
now? Oh, to who?
to these people here at the dinner party. Now that they're all drugged and they're feeling happy again, she tells this, and this for her apparently counts as a happy story. She recognizes Odysseus, gets him to come back to her place, bathes him. So, I won't tell your secret, but tell me what your plan is. And then after that, after she lets him go, what does he do?
Sail back home.
Not yet. What does he do? So once he reveals the whole Achaean strategy, what does he do? And once
He cut.
he cut what? Yeah, it's a spying and assassination mission. Not the same one that we see in the Iliad, where he and he and Diomedes go at night and they kill all these guys. Not that one. A different one. What is that? Book 9 of the Iliad. That's a fun one. But here, this is another occasion where Odysseus disguises himself, sneaks into Troy, kills a whole bunch of guys, and then gets out. And Helen here, she says, my heart had changed by now. Already at that point, she felt bad. Why she doesn't blow him into the Trojans. I grieved too late for the madness Aphrodite sent me. She says Aphrodite, the goddess of romantic love, made her mad, made her crazy. And that's what brought her to Troy. All right, but apparently that counts as a happy memory of Odysseus. Bottom of 132. And the red-haired Menelaus answered Helen, there was a tale, my lady, so well told. Now then, I have studied in my time the plans and minds of great ones by the score. And I have traveled over a good part of the world, but never once have I laid eyes on a man like him. What a heart that fearless Odysseus had inside him. What a piece of work the hero dared and carried off in the wooden horse where all our best encamped, our champions armed with bloody death for Troy. When along you came, Helen, roused no doubt by a dark power bent on giving Troy some glory, and dashing Prince Deiphobus squired your every step. 3 times you sauntered round our hollow ambush, feeling, stroking its flanks, challenging all our fighters, calling each by name. Yours was the voice of all our long-lost wives. And Diomedes and I, crouched tight in the midst with great Odysseus, hearing you singing out, were both keen to spring up and sally forth, or give you a sudden answer from inside. But Odysseus damped our ardor, reined us back. Then all of the rest of the troops kept stock still, all but Anticlus. He was hot to salute you now, but Odysseus clamped his great hands on the man's mouth and shut it brutally. Yes, he saved us all, holding on grim set till Pallas Athena lured you off at last. What story does Menelaus remember about Odysseus? Another story from the war. Where was he at the time of this story? Troy. Okay, doing what?
When they're on the horse.
Right, they're inside the Trojan horse. They're going to use to finally capture the city. Who's in there? Odysseus, Menelaus, a few other guys. And what happens while they're inside this horse? Who comes up to this horse? So the Trojans bring it into the city. I think, wow, this is so amazing. The Greeks left us this present. They bring it in. Some people are a little suspicious. Who shows up? Helen. What does she do? She starts singing.
Wait, this after she knows the plan?
Well, yeah, apparently, yes, she knew the plan. So she's suspicious, and so she, does she sing? Not quite. Look at lines 310 to 312. 3 times you sauntered round our hollow ambush, feeling, stroking its flanks, challenging all our fighters, calling each by name. Yours was the voice of all our long-lost lives. What is Helen, the most beautiful woman?
The voice of all their lost lives.
In a sense, that's how it seems to them.
Oh.
When she comes up to the horse, we have here the most beautiful woman in the world. You have these men who've been at this war for 10 years now. They're inside, trapped inside this horse, waiting. And what does Helen do? Not quite joking around.
It's like she's trying to say without really saying it.
Subliminal?
Not even subliminal. She's trying to trick them into saying something. Notice she saunters around the horse. She walks around it, but sauntering in a sort of casual way. Remember, this is Helen we're talking about. She feels and strokes the flanks of the horse.
What does that mean?
So the flanks are the upper parts of the legs of the horse.
Oh.
So she's feeling, and she calls out their names: Odysseus, Agamemnon, Menelaus. Are you in there? Yes.
She was.
No, dude.
And how do they respond? How do these Greeks respond? They try not to, right? They know if they make a sound, then the gig is up. How does Odysseus figure into this? What does he do? But Odysseus damped our ardor, reined us back. Ardor is enthusiasm, a sort of burning desire, ardor. Odysseus damped that. He calmed them down. He reined them back. And one guy, what does he have to do with this one guy? Probably. Yeah, what is Anticlus? What's the situation with him? Line 320. Yeah, he was hot to salute you now. Apparently, Anticlus is a bit more excited about this than the rest of them. But Odysseus clamped his great hands on the man's mouth and shut it brutally. Yes, he saved us all. Odysseus physically keeps this man's mouth shut. Shut it brutally is probably here a euphemism for killing him. He holds his hands over this guy's mouth so he can't speak until the guy suffocates. Yes. Yeah. Notice both of these are stories not just about Odysseus, but also about Helen being her seductive self. There is that overtone to both of these stories. We notice she gets the information out of Odysseus, what? After she's bathed him and rubbed him with oil. It's what you do after you bathe in the Greek world. She comes up to the horse and she strokes its flanks, she strokes its legs, and calls out the names of the men that she knows are inside. Yeah. Okay. Telemachus responds here. But clear-sighted Telemachus ventured, son of Atreus, King Menelaus, captain of armies, so much the worse, for not one bit of that saved him from grisly death. Not even a heart of iron could have helped. But come, send us off to bed. It's time to rest, time to enjoy the sweet relief of sleep. And Helen briskly told her serving women to make beds in the porch's shelter, lay down some heavy purple throws for the beds themselves, and over them spread some blankets, thick woolly robes, a warm covering laid on top. Torches in hand, they left the hall and made up beds at once. The herald led the two guests on, and so they slept outside the palace under the forecourt's colonnade, young Prince Telemachus and Nestor's shining sun. Menelaus retired to chambers deep in his lofty house with Helen, the pearl of women, loosely gowned beside him. When young Dawn with her rose-red fingers shone once more, the lord of the war cry climbed from bed and dressed. Over his shoulder he slung his well-honed sword, fastened rawhide sandals under his smooth feet, stepped from his bedroom handsome as a god, and sat beside Telemachus, asking kindly, "Now, my young prince, tell me, what brings you here to sunny Lacedaemon, sailing over the sea's broad back? A public matter or private? Tell me the truth now." And with all the poise he had, Telemachus replied, "Son of Atreus, King Menelaus, captain of armies, I came in the hope that you can tell me now some news about my father. My house is being devoured, my rich farms destroyed, my palace is crammed with enemies, slaughtering on and on my droves of sheep and shambling longhorn cattle. Suitors plague my mother, insolent, overweening. That's why I've come to plead before you now. If you can tell me about his cruel death, perhaps you saw him die with your own eyes, or heard the wanderer's end from someone else. More than all other men, that man was born for pain. Don't soften a thing from pity, respect for me. Tell me clearly all your eyes have witnessed. I beg you, if ever my father, Lord Odysseus, pledged you his word and made it good in action once on the fields of Troy, where you Achaeans suffered, remember his story now. Tell me the truth." "How shameful!" the red-haired king burst out in anger. "That's the bed of a brave man of war they'd like to crawl inside. Those spineless, craven cowards. Weak as the doe that beds down her fawns in a mighty lion's den, her newborn sucklings, then trails off to the mountain spurs and grassy bends to graze her fill. But back the lion comes to his own lair, and the master deals both fawns a ghastly, bloody death. Just what Odysseus will deal that mob, ghastly death. Ah, if only Father Zeus, Athena, and Lord Apollo, that man who years ago in the games at Lesbos rose to Philomeleides' challenge, wrestled him, pinned him down with one tremendous throw, and the Argives roared with joy. If only that Odysseus sported with those suitors, a blood wedding, a quick death would take the lot. But about the things you've asked me so intently, I'll skew and sidestep nothing, not deceive you ever. Of all he told me, the old man of the sea who never lies, I'll hide or hold back nothing, not a single word." Notice here, just at the top of 135, we see, this is something we see frequently in Homer, comparisons to the natural world. He says these suitors are like a deer that puts her fawns, her babies, into a lion's den. And then she goes out and the lion comes back home. He says that's what these suitors are like. That's the lion's den. And they're not lions, Odysseus says. And apparently Menelaus has heard this information from someone called the Old Man of the Sea. And we'll get introduced to him. "I was in Egypt, where the gods still marooned me, eager as I was to voyage home. I'd failed, you see, to render them full flawless victims, and gods are always keen to see their rules obeyed. Now, there's an island out in the ocean's heavy surge, well off the Egyptian thing beach where crews pull in, draw water up from the dark wells, then push their vessels off for passage out. But here the gods becalmed me 20 days, not a breath of the breezes ruffling out to sea that speed a ship across the ocean's broad back. Now our rations would all have been consumed, our crew's stamina too, if one of the gods had not felt sorry for me, shown me mercy." 136. "Eidothea, a daughter of Proteus, that great power, the old man of the sea. My troubles must have moved her to the heart when she met me trudging by myself without my men. They kept roaming around the beach, day in, day out, fishing with twisted hooks, their bellies racked by hunger. Well, she came right up to me, filled with questions. 'Are you a fool, stranger, soft in the head and lazy too? Or do you let things slide because you like your pain? Here you are, cooped up on an island far too long, with no way out of it, none that you can find, while all your shipmates' spirit ebbs away.' So she prodded, and I replied at once, 'Let me tell you, goddess, whoever you are, I'm hardly landlocked here of my own free will, so I must have angered one of the deathless gods who rule the skies up there. But you tell me, you immortals know it all, which one of you blocks my way here, keeps me from my voyage? How can I cross the swarming sea and reach home at last?' And the glistening goddess reassured me warmly, 'Of course, my friend, I'll answer all your questions. Who haunts these parts? Proteus of Egypt does, the immortal old man of the sea who never lies, who sounds the deep in all its depths, Poseidon's servant. He's my father, they say. He gave me life. And he, if only you ambush him somehow and pin him down, will tell you the way to go, the stages of your voyage, how you can cross the swarming sea and reach home at last. And he can tell you, too, if you want to press him. You are a king, it seems. All that's occurred within your palace, good and bad, while you've been gone your long and painful way. So then you are the one, I quickly took her up. Show me the trick to trap this ancient power, or he'll see or sense me first and slip away. It's hard for a mortal man to force a god. So Menelaus here, remember we had learned from Nestor that Menelaus, after he left Troy, ended up in Egypt for a while. And that's what Menelaus is telling us about here. So he's in Egypt, but what's the problem? What's the problem here for Menelaus? Well, he's in Egypt. Anyone? On page 135. I was in Egypt, where the gods still marooned me, eager as I was to voyage home. I'd failed, you see, to render them full, flawless victims. And he says in 402, but here the gods becalmed me 20 days, not a breath of the breezes ruffling out to sea that speed a ship across the ocean's broad back. What does it mean to maroon someone? You want to know? Marooning?
I mean, lost. In lost cause.
So this is this was a punishment that used to be used sometimes on sailing ships. If you tried something nasty, like trying to a mutiny, trying to take over the ship, they might maroon you, find some island someplace, preferably with nobody else living on it, and leave you there and sail away. Effectively a death sentence, not necessarily, but more or less. And so he says, the gods marooned me in Egypt, actually in this island called Pharos near Egypt. Why is he stuck there? Why have the gods stuck him there? What did he not do? He tells us on 135. Line 393, 392 and 393. I'd failed, you see, to render them full, flawless victims. What had he not done sufficiently? What does it mean to render victims? What's a victim? Right, a victim is what you offer up in a sacrifice, the thing that you kill for a sacrifice. And he hadn't done that. He hadn't properly sacrificed to the gods. And they get him stuck there. He says, the gods becalmed me. Not a breath of the breezes ruffling out to sea that speed a ship across the ocean's broad back. How do they stick him in Egypt? What is there not? It's something he needs to sail. They becalmed him. There's no wind, right? They becalmed him there. 20 days, no wind. His men are running out of food. They're trying to fish. It's like Survivor or something. Apparently they're not very good at it. He's not sure why he's stuck there. And finally somebody shows up to help him out. What's their name? Starts with an E.
I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, Edithia, which means something like beautiful goddess. She's the daughter of Proteus, and Proteus,
Yo, bro, you got some wild ass shit.
yeah, is the old man of the sea. He's a sort of weird god. We're going to see. He's a servant of Poseidon. Apparently, he hangs around here in Egypt. And she says, well, Proteus can help you out, but you're going to have to grab him first. So we'll see how he does that. Remember, this is still all this story that Menelaus is telling us about what he knows about Odysseus. He and Odysseus got separated after everybody left Troy, but apparently he got some intel from Proteus, the old man of the sea who never lies. All right, we'll stop there for today. Thank you very much. And so we'll continue book 4 tomorrow. This book 4 questions will be due on Wednesday.